Well, hello, beautiful Jessica. Welcome to the High Vibe Home podcast. How are you?
I'm amazing, girl, because I'm with you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh,
I really am. Thank you for having me.
well, it's been an honor to have you on and really visit this new chapter you're in with the new book. And I get caught up and hear about all the things. For the listeners, we've had Jessica on the show years ago when you wrote your first book. So it's kind of an exciting time to always reconnect and like hear what's going on in your world. So for those of you that don't know Jessica, she is a quote unquote spiritual hustler. I kind of feel like she's our modern day muse of the spiritual and business, world, and really being able to tap into our feminine power. She is a multi-million dollar business owner, best-selling author, and truly a social media phenomenon. I mean, come on. If you go to her social media, this woman knows all about branding, aesthetic. She always looks good. She's always shining her light. So welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, I am honored. I really am. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's kind of weird to hear it back. I'm like, am I all those things? I'll receive it. I'll receive it.
Yeah, well, you are, and it is. It's always weird though, feeling like hearing what you've been doing because you are always up to a lot of big things. So
Mm.
that's great. Well, I want to hear all about the new book. Before we do, I have a question for you because we have a whole new format here. I think when you were on the show before, it was like I am Goddess Collective, so I rebranded, and so I really like to help. Others really get into like their high vibe energy. So, what are some things that you do that really elevate your vibration, your energy, and really ultimately like keeps your vibes high all day?
What don't I do? Keeping my vibes high is my full time job, girl. I feel like we have to
Right?
have practices, we have to have rituals and devotions to our own sacred vessel, which is our body. And our body is our vehicle, it's our sacred technology, it's the home of our soul. And I've been on quite the journey since you know, we last saw each other, and have made joy and my spiritual practice and my
Mm.
my frequency my job. And so, I really try and start every day. I kind of have a solid morning routine, which I know is so cliche, but it really is everything to me. I live in a beautiful community and area in Nashville, and I love to take a walk in the morning. I try and walk 3 miles, and I just listen to music. I walk slow. I
Mm.
really get in touch with nature. Like, I look at the birds and the trees and the squirrels and the bunnies and stop and smell the flowers, literally, to just allow my body to get into more of that natural rhythm with Gaia. Um, I have a ritual at my altar every morning. I have these really high frequency salts from Egypt that I mean, we're getting real detailed here, but I put them under my
Ooh,
tongue.
cool.
They help to radiate a higher consciousness, open up your pineal gland. I have very powerful crystals that I hold when I meditate. I love to journal. I pray. I commune with my angels. I love to go up, as I come back down. I try and get outside throughout the day when I'm in the middle of work days and put my bare feet on the ground and look at the sun and just connect again, root down. I think so much of my story of building a big business and hustling, not in the spiritual way up until recently, caused a lot of burnout, which is a huge part of my story. And so I have to be committed to being in my body and helping my nervous system stay regulated and in homeostasis. I love to dance. I go to ecstatic dance classes a couple times a month, move energy. I like to move my body. I do some Pilates and yoga in the morning if I have a little bit of time. I'm really gentle on my body, to be honest. I used to work out like a fiend and do Soul Cycle and Barry's Boot Camp and all that crazy shit. And I'm like, all about gentleness and ease, walking, breathing, slow movements, and just at the end of the day, mostly all. I think it all also comes down to the energy that you put around you in the form of other people. And I really am blessed that I have just a beautiful inner circle that am in team and partner that keeps me, grounded and safe. And so it's a lot of things, but like I said, it's like my full-time job. What don't I do?
Yeah, did you guys get all that? Because that was a whole book in it of itself. Like, there's so much good stuff there. One of the things I want to pull out, though, that I love is that you go on walks in the morning, like the first thing you do, specifically because I just started doing this and I was like, I've been watching some like Sex of the City reruns, and the power walking was such a vibe, back in the 90s. And I was thinking, like, I need something that's not a hard workout, something that's easy, but I know it raises my energy. And walking or like power walking and listening to music, it just really has shifted my day. So thank you for bringing that out. I'm totally
Yeah.
on that vibe. And I think it's important for others to have like quick things that they can do. Maybe it's not a 3 mile, but maybe it's just you start
Yeah.
walking for a minute and then suddenly you're walking for 30 minutes,
Yes. Yes.
because it ain't easy to get that body moving sometimes.
No, and like walking is, I mean, the best form of exercise. I remember I was in Santa Monica years ago and I went to a yoga class with Brian Kest, who's one of the world's top yoga teachers. And he said that walking is the best form of exercise. And this was when I was deep in like
Mm,
my body dysmorphia and obsessively working out, running marathons, doing the boot camps, doing the core power hot yogas. And when he said that, I was so triggered. I was like, there's no way that walking is the best exercise. And I'm telling you, it like actually like melts fat, like gets you lean. Like walking is amazing. And it's so healing. It's a meditation, you know? So I can't say
yeah.
enough good things about it.
There's a reason why there's hot girl walks, or my
Yeah.
friend likes to call it healing girl walks. So
Hell
that's fun
yeah.
too.
I like that one better for sure.
Yeah, mental health walks, you name it. I mean, they are so vital. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us a little bit about where you've been. I mean, you've been on a long journey, I know, and now I know you've sold a business. There's like a lot of shifts in your life. So give us a little recap. Like in the last year, what do you feel like has been the biggest
Mm,
like transformation you've been through?
yeah. It's been the last couple years. I mean, year to two
Okay.
years, but last time we hung out, I was in the middle of running my agency. I had a personal branding agency called the Simply Be Agency, which was, a business I started from literally debt and created a multi seven figure business, a 30-person team, had two offices, served 700 clients, got myself on Forbes and Inc. 5000 and, wrote a number one best-selling book. And it was like this amazing chapter of my career where it just everything kind of exploded. And in 2022, so about 2 years ago, reached I when I say burnout, we throw that word around a lot in our culture. There's a spectrum of burnout for sure, and I had
Mm-hmm.
reached pretty much the depths of a burnout, like physical, mental, emotional depletion, and had been diagnosed with situational depression. I mean, my business had just taken my whole life over. I was running at a sprint pace for 5 years straight and I crashed. I mean, you can't sustain that level of hustle.
Mm-mm.
And that was a really pivotal year for me, 2022. I mean, I couldn't leave my house for the first few months of that year. I didn't shower. I mean, I showered periodic. I had no energy to socialize, to
Yeah.
live like a human because I was
Mm.
so burnt out. And that year led me to very serendipitously, I think my higher self had oriented an international trip that I had planned to go to Egypt at the end of 2022. By the time I got on that plane at the beginning, it was a 15-day spiritual pilgrimage. I wanted to burn my whole life down. I was really like, even at the more so dark than that depression. I don't know if you know anything about Egypt, but
Oh,
Egypt will
yeah.
fuck up. Yeah, Egypt will fuck up your life in the most beautiful way.
I haven't been
Um,
yet. It's on the list. I guess I get to be ready for my life to be totally turned around, right? In order for that to really happen.
you have been warned. Don't go to Egypt unless you're ready for a full life
I've always felt that
transformation.
way. Yeah, I've always had that intuition of like when I go, because studying just a little fractional amounts like Egyptian magic or Egyptian worship and ceremony and the codes of Isis and Mary Magdalene, like there is a whole, I feel like, yeah, there's that sort of serpent of the
Yeah.
shedding of the
Yes.
old and rebirthing.
I mean, it is a portal on our planet. It is a direct open gate to the cosmos and the galactic stargates of our universe, of our galaxy specifically. And there are frequencies inside these temples that are still very much alive, that are encoded with these higher dimensional realities and frequencies. And you step into these temples, of which I went to about 10 over the course of that 15-day pilgrimage. And you have these experiences there that when you recount them to people, it sounds like you were like on ayahuasca, but you're not. You're sober and you're having these visualizations and you're hearing things and things are happening to you physically that just alchemize your DNA. Like they truly, truly call you home. They turn your codes of consciousness online. And I came back from that trip a different person. Like I literally died in one of those temples. I had a massive, massive experience in one of them that I write about extensively in my new book. I go through that whole story in detail. But I came back literally new. Like that's how people were like, how was Egypt? I'm like, I'm new. I don't know how else to describe it. And ever since that trip came, this sort of unraveling and unbecoming of the life that I had built and the way I was running my business and what I really wanted to say and share with the world, which was not necessarily talking about marketing and branding and social media, although I still do that and I'm good at it and it's part of my core, offerings with my work, but to really have a new conversation around our identities as women here on this planet at this time. Because that was one of the biggest pieces of information that I got from the goddess of Hathor in that temple Dendera that had this, massive experience. And since that, trip, and I want people to read my book and feel like they have the keys right now. They don't have to book a plane ticket and go to Egypt for this transformation. I believe it's available to all of us right now, which is why I wrote this book so that many people could read this. But from there, I sold my company. I channeled this book that I wrote in 3 months. It came through me like an open source. I hosted some of my, claim your light retreats. I had hosted retreats years ago and I decided to do them again for fun. And they turned out to be the most magnificent things I've ever done. And I got really clear where I would go next if I sold my business, what I wanted to do with my time here on this planet. And, rebranded my life, rebranded my podcast, rebranded my website, like hard launched this whole new identity, which to my audience was new, but was really, marinating and unfolding behind the scenes for about a year and a half before I sold the business and came out of the spiritual closet, if you will. But I feel like I've had a complete shape shifting, past 2 years. And I came home from Egypt and didn't just, say to myself, well, that was an amazing experience. I integrated that experience. I changed my lifestyle because of that experience. And, here I am today. I feel so blessed and honored to be on podcasts like yours, telling this story and talking about this, because what I got from Hathor and Isis and Sekhmet and all the goddesses that I communed with when I was there was that these weren't messages for Jessica. These were messages for all women, as many women as I could possibly reach. And I feel very much in service to that responsibility, knowing that it's not mine alone. And that if we really want to create a more harmonic 5D new earth, as I call it, we have to have a mass amount of light workers and a collective of people, not just women, who are really operating from this new source of understanding of what's really happening here and to do something different about it.
And when the goddess speaks, you really can't not listen.
Yeah, listen.
You get to listen.
You have to listen.
It's such a sweet message when it comes through, but it's also very challenging because it's like, oh, hey, sweetie, here's the message. But then it's actually going to involve your whole entire life completely transforming. So I'm sure I totally relate to that, not going to Egypt, but just, having a deep devotion to the goddess, and going, I surrender. Like, I'm not happy. I'm not this. My environment is totally not what I want it to be. Show me the way,
Show me the way. Yes.
and
Yes.
being open to taking the steps necessary in order to be happy and to be at peace.
Yes, yes. And if I can just add to that, so it's what you're speaking to is the exquisite power of surrender. And that isn't easy, I came back from that trip, and I'll just use, what happened upon the return of that Egypt trip. I was hustling, right? Like my body was a robot, like pushing, pushing, pushing to make all this money, to hold up my business, to pay my multi six figure payroll every month, right? And having like the sky to hold up. And I came back after that experience surrendering to the medicine and the wisdom of the goddesses. And I had no ability, physical ability, to push my body that hard. And my business stopped making as much money. And there was a
Mm.
real like 3D implication for my activation. And I remember calling my guide, my coach, and because she really ushered me through a lot of this transformation. And I was like, what is happening to me? Like, I can't, my whole life feels like it's falling apart. And she was like, this is what happens when you commit to Gaia, to Mother Earth, to your role, and you unhook from the matrix. Like, this is what happens, Jessica, and you have to surrender to it. And it wasn't always pretty. A lot of the time it was painful. So I just want to offer that for those listening who are like, yeah, surrender, sure, that sounds easy, or I'll try that, or no way. I get, like, it's a very real thing to surrender. I think it's our highest assignment, frankly.
That is very well put. Highest assignment. Let that sink in. That just hit me hard. My body's covered in chills. Yeah, we really don't have the power or control or the things that we think, or we've been told at least, that we can obtain. And in order to arrive at a place where maybe we have more truth, more clarity, more success from a different space, because I'm sure a lot of people, looked at you when you had Simply Be, myself included, were like, wow, she's incredible. What she's doing is amazing. And we never know what's going on behind the curtain.
Never.
And that burnout is, I love that burnout is having a huge spotlight right now. I feel like there's, like yourself sharing this deep message of burnout, because I think what happened during the big life shift we all went through, a couple of years ago, not just on a global scale, but personally, it really brought a lot of us women to a new level of awareness of how we want to work
Yes.
that doesn't involve hustling and
Yeah.
doesn't involve the masculine way of doing things all the time. It's so much softer, it's so much slower.
Yeah.
And that's challenging because it's like we are really getting into a new way of doing things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially because there's that like wounded feminine in business, and learning how to reprogram to really tap into our energy from that power. And that's actually like a huge question I have for you, because I think a lot of women struggle with finding that true power
Mm.
that they can tap into that's
Yeah.
not masculine. It's like, how
Yeah.
do you get into that place where you're really leading from the place of your true feminine power?
Yeah. I have so much to say about this. What you mentioned just now around, you use the word slow. And we're really hooked into this patriarchal system that has been constructed for the last 4,000 years that really values dominance and competition and building and action and power and control, really. And as women, we're not designed that way. We're living inside of a system that was not written for us nor by us. And so one is just becoming aware of that, like just simply seeing the forest from the trees, that this is kind of insane to think that this is real and this is how we should all live. The second thing, I have an image of a key on the cover of my book, which is formulated, if you will, with like a downward facing triangle. And there's the downward facing triangles reflected all throughout my book. And the downward facing triangle is the feminine expression of the triangle, which, if you make a triangle with your fingers right now, it can also represent a chalice, right? Like a cup,
Mm-hmm.
a, or, also the womb, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the womb is the center of all creation. It is a black void, and it literally births the universe. Like, women create the universe. It's insane. And there is no, yes, it's an ultimate bursting and an explosion, if you will, when you think about like a birth of something, but it calls whatever is to be created within it with a pull, with a magnetism. And it is in our non-doing and in our slowness, like really stepping into a pace that is internally calm. Like, the world around you can be spinning, your tech can be breaking down, your emails can be 100 deep, your dogs can be barking at you because they've got to go out while you're in the middle of a Zoom call. Like, the world is going to spin around you, but finding that internal sense of stillness, I think is a practice. And women have this innate magnetism because of that. I often think of the womb as that chalice. Like, the less we do, the more we attract. And it's really turning up your magnetism through the frequency of joy, which some may say is trivial or indulgent. But joy is an alchemy. Joy is a frequency that allows us to get into alignment, and we attract. Like attracts like. This is quantum science and physics as much as it is spirituality. And when we're in a higher vibrational state and calm and trusting in our bodies, that to me is one aspect of turning on your feminine power. Leading from our hearts, really being. My friend Mel, who was just on my podcast, said, I don't want to be known for my success. I want to be known for how deeply I love. And
Mm.
it's like, we undervalue these qualities of empathy and compassion and connection, and how can we express those in our day-to-day lives as much as we can. And that to me is a cracking open of just really looking at what is considered the feminine values of stillness and beauty and compassion and play and pleasure and sensuality and abundance and nourishment, and making those things as important to us day to day as the product launch planning and the strategic linear thinking that we have to put out fires and the things that come with being a real person in the world, but to not overvalue those strengths or those moments, but to really come home to the fact that we have such innate power in our beingness as women. And that has been frankly written out and oppressed and repressed over the last 4,000 years of the patriarchy. So really coming back to that knowledge that literally lives inside of ourselves is, that was a big answer to your question, but I feel like it's a big question.
I expected nothing less from you with that, with that answer. I mean, so many good points there. What I am really hearing you say is it's a new framework, really.
Yes.
It's not, it's like
Yes.
the listening to the body.
Yes.
What is the body saying versus what do I have to do? Like, do I really get to do that right now? Do I have to do that? Do I need to do another launch? Do
Right.
I need to be doing do I need to be growing my email? Do I need to be, and that framework alone is another way that, when you take, actually kind of going back to Egypt, when you take all this stuff aside, like, we didn't have, none of that existed, but there was an ancient, there's what's called, I guess, the cult of Isis, which I know a little bit about, but I know that they talked about the Holy Grail being the woman's, yoni, the
Yes.
woman's gateway
Yes.
to power.
Yes.
And when you come back to just that, like, how does I'm just going to say it, like, how does your pussy feel when you actually want to do something? Does it turn
Yeah,
you on or does it turn you off? And
I
what
love
if
it.
we kind of went through life that way, right?
Yes.
Kind of a different concept than
Oh, I love
just
it.
checking off the boxes.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. So, are you familiar with the chakra system? I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our red root, our yoni, our sacral orange is our sacral chakra, personal power is yellow, heart is green, blue is throat, indigo is third eye, and like violet is our crown. And I I worked with a healer who really read my body, and my firmer brand Simply Be was yellow, bright yellow, right? And this solar plex area right here in the center of kind of right above your navel represents personal power, right? Manifestation, confidence, exuding your message. And when it came to my chakra system, I was fully online. Like, look what I created. Like, very much in my personal power, super in my heart, could use my voice. Hello, this is what I do for a living. Like, very intuitive and super connected. My root chakra, my yoni, and my sacral, my womb were completely offline, like dead. I knew those chakras existed. I didn't give a shit about them. I was like, one of these days I'll look there. And when I was in Egypt, I went into Sekhmet's chamber at the temple of Ptah, Karnak. It's a very exclusive place to go. We had to tip off our guards $4,000 as a group. There was 20 of us. We all pitched in to tip off the guards at Karnak to let us all inside of Sekhmet's chamber. You're not allowed to go in there. And there's this huge statue of her. And I walked in
Wow.
and I literally felt my clitoris like start to tingle and my womb start to pulse, and I heard her. I'm very clairaudient, and I by this point I was like 10 days into the trip, and I was like wide freaking open. But I heard her say to me, "You think you're powerful now, Jessica? Turn these centers on in your body, and you will be more unstoppable than you even know." And we have sacred
Wow.
technology down there, and we I don't want to say we as a general statement, but I will, like, we don't realize what we can do with that power. And it is, we create the universe down there. And you're right, like Isis and Mary Magdalene, there was a lot of like sexual rites that they did to connect to the cosmic quantum divine, and we've just like made it taboo in our
It's
culture.
super repressed. It's
Yes,
it's it's so repressed.
so
Yeah, through
repressed,
religion, through patriarchy, through, I mean,
all
there's
of
a
it.
reason why it was cut off from us. And now I do believe that we are really reclaiming that,
Yes,
you
we
know,
are.
and it's not easy because it's kind of uncomfortable. Actually, it's really uncomfortable, even just to say like pussy or, the vagina, or use sex as a ritual,
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
I have a whole, in my book I talk a lot about the Pleiadians, all right? And whether you believe in extraterrestrials or not, I'm not here to convince you in my book or my message to believe in something that feels far away or weird. However, I believe in it, and it's helped me make sense of my own life and my own reality. And I've read a lot about their books, a lot about them through their books, specifically from Barbara Marciniak. I got a huge credit to her. She's written multiple books, pure channelings of them. And kind of like Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channels Abraham. She has channeled the Pleiadians in these books. And they say, of many things that they say, that sexuality, our ability to orgasm, is our basically biggest superpower tool to ascend in to multidimensional reality, to heal, to reach oneness. We want to reach oneness, we might do bufo or aya or mushrooms or whatever. They're like, no, yo, you have it in your body to create those states of consciousness, to reach those states of consciousness. And it's a big reason why it has been so repressed by religion and the patriarchy. I mean, this is a very big conversation going back to the matriarchy and the sort of the repression of the goddess cultures. and the dawn of church and state and what they did to literally erase the goddess. And it's playing itself out in 2024, you know, and the way women treat their bodies, look at their bodies, create relationships with their bodies or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to say, like, it's time to remember. It's time to reclaim. It's
It
our
is so
biggest
the
work.
year.
It's
It
it's
is.
time. It's a pivot point.
Well, the year of the dragon, in feng
Yes.
shui is like the most mystical,
Yes.
symbolic energy that it's the perfect year to really reclaim that. I remember I do like a annual report and class and talk about the energies, and the biggest energy that kept coming through is that this year is the year of magic. It's the year of mysticism. It's the year where these come back into the spotlight. And then we're in this new, period 9 now with this feminine rise of the feminine fire kind of energy, where it's now we're like really being able to be ignited by our mysticism, by our magic. And remember,
Yes.
I'm in chills. Like
I'm in chills
it's
too. Full body chills. My friend
yeah.
Christina Hollander, give her a huge shout out. She's a feng shui teacher.
Yes, we chat all the time, and we've been on
Ah,
each other's podcasts. I love her. Yeah.
she's delicious. I just
Yeah.
love her so much. And I've learned so much from her. I call that girl like pure codes. And she has taught me a lot about all the things, but the year of the dragon is she's called it the year of like spiritual feminine leadership. And
Yep.
the
Yep.
year to reap the harvest of all of the seeds that we've all planted around this work to like bloom. And this is just the beginning, you know? And I just think it's such an exciting time to be alive right now. I really do. It's a crazy time to be alive, but it's also a really amazing time
It's
to be alive.
crazy. It is crazy. It is. It's all the things, but it's why we're here. And I keep telling that to my fellow, like, what the hell is going on, group of women when we sit down and we're like, okay, the stars are here. This is what's going on. And then you take, everything else happening, and it's just why we're here. We came to remember, we came to burn it all down, to rise up. And I know that you're on this. I love that you're on this path, and I love that your codes that you are embodying are literally this conversation. It's literally whatever you received in Egypt. It's and speaking to Egypt too, it's like they knew something so much deeper about the pyramids. Like, we can't even explain that phenomenon, how it was even created, but I believe they knew much deeper feng shui than I could even understand. But they understood the stars, they understood the earth. We were so much more connected, and we have that ability. It's just we're really distracted in this world.
We
So
really are.
we get to go back to that.
Yeah, we get to reclaim it. It's it's so true. And I really believe, by the way, that's so refreshing to be on your podcast because I've been on so many, and to be able to go deep into this stuff with you, like and I was on your podcast for my business book, which was like beautiful, but I love how you can hold the space for all of it, and you're so awake, and it's just such a gift to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, like I said, you were the facilitator, like your energy, what you're bringing to the table. And I think this is probably a good dose of what's inside of your book. And I've been watching you. I see you. I feel like, so I said, I'm like, you've been on this like deep spiritual journey, haven't you? Because it's your aura. It's what I feel from you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And yes, F yes, like we are here to do that, and for those that are listening that don't really know how, I think that I'll let you answer that question. What would you say to someone who's like, I want that. I want to be
Mm.
more awakened to my feminine power, to my consciousness, to be able to really own a business from an aligned place, to step out of my comfort zone. Like, what's your advice for those listening that are kind of in that position?
What's coming through is really truly the message that I make throughout my book, my new book, The Light Work, which is to face your shadows, to really start
Oof.
by looking at, like I make the joke, I called the book The Light Work, but I could have named it The Dark Work, because this is not a spiritual bypass, love and light, toxic positivity kind of book. This is a very raw, vulnerable, naked, truth-telling book about the darkest shit I've ever been through, but not about me, but as a mirror and as hopefully a sister to the reader, that she's not alone. And the crux, the true pinpoint magic, if you will, of personal and spiritual growth is radical responsibility. I love your question, Nixie. I'm going to come back to it. You're like, what can someone do if they're wanting to build a business like this from alignment and have this platform or whatever there is,
or maybe just even like evolve spiritually,
evolve spiritually. Exactly.
Whatever.
That requires us to go through, not around, our shadows, to really look at the things that have held us back, whether it's our trauma, whether it's our self-limiting beliefs, whether it's our shame and our failures, our grief and our suffering. Those are pieces of you that have been calling out for your love and for your attention and for your, yes, to some degree, radical responsibility in your own co-creation of whatever it is that is keeping you stuck. And that is the real invitation of my book, is to say, in every aspect of your life, because I talk about business and I talk about money and I talk about friendships and romantic relationships and family and body and emotions and personal power. I talk about it all in the book. And it's really the only way that we can become, I believe, unstoppable, completely empowered, completely magnetic, and be that light that draws more light to it. We have to do this work. We have to commit to understanding our humanness and bring those fragmented pieces of ourselves back home to love. I tell the story in the beginning of the book. I went to this temple. It was the temple of neutrality called Kom Ombo. And I stepped into the dark side of the temple, felt all this dark stuff arise. I stepped into the light side of the temple, felt my childhood little girl playing in her room, pure innocence. I just come off the hardest year of my life. I went back to the riverboat. We were sailing down on the Nile. I had this little balcony off my room. I took out my journal. I wrote down all the dark shit that I saw and felt in that temple. It was like my burnout, my rage, my victims, my resentment towards my husband for not rescuing me, my jealousy of my friends who have easier lives, my employees for breaking my heart, my business for crushing my soul, my parents for da 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 da, and just wrote it all down. And I ripped it up into shreds and I threw it in the Nile River, like with so much pride and satisfaction that I was going to release all my dark. And I sit down on the little sofa on that balcony, closed my eyes to settle the ritual. And I heard my higher self. I heard spirit say, something said to me. I heard a voice and it said, Jessica, these are not the pieces of you to rip up and drown. These are the pieces of you to love. That is the invitation of my work and my book, is to say we all have it. And where it gets dangerous and where it stops serving us is when we ignore it, when we suppress it, when we try and fucking throw it down the river. And to call back with love these pieces of ourselves that we're ashamed of or not proud of, when we can really truly alchemize that, that's when we get into alignment. That's when our spiritual growth expands. That's when our businesses blossom. That's when we call in the right relationships. And it's a continual journey, of calling back those pieces, because there's no destination on this path called spiritual evolution. It's an evolution. It's constant. But that is my response to that question.
If she didn't just bring you to tears, don't rip your parts of you. Like, it just hit how many of you have torn up your shadows, thrown them into the fire at every full moon ritual. I mean, that alone, this is all you need to hear on this podcast right
Mm,
now. Like
mm.
that's how I'm a little speechless because that is really potent stuff coming out of you, Jessica. Like, holy crap.
It's in the book. More of that
Wow.
came from in the book for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
I'm hoping that when you come across this podcast and you hopefully pick up a copy, that you just feel seen and you feel less alone and you feel invited into your potential, your higher
And I think
potential.
that, well, you essentially bring your light. And I get the feeling, and based on some of the stories that you've shared too, is so much of your light comes from that darkness. It comes
Yep.
from the shadows. It
Yes.
comes from all of the hard things that you've had to face. And I love you for that because you're so raw about it and you're honest and vulnerable. And a lot of people just avoid and don't want to
Right.
talk about those things.
Right.
So, I think that's a huge part of the work. And I always had like a little cringe with the word light worker, but I think you just healed that for me on this podcast today. So
Good.
thanks.
I'm so happy to hear that.
I've told some of my some close friends and like clients, they're like, "Well, I'm a light worker." And I'm like, "Okay, it's sort of a cringe word because it definitely has some heavy weight to it because I
Yeah.
feel like you can't claim yourself as a light worker without claiming your shadow. You
Correct.
have to go through those dark places to be able to understand what a light worker is here to do. You can't just be like, I'm a light worker and know nothing about the other side. There's a yin and
Amen.
there's a yang.
Yes. Yes.
There is that balance and polarity and needing to come back to the really scary things that you've got to meet. Like I have a whole book of shadows filled of them. They're really lovely, but the key piece
Amen.
that you said is like loving them
Yes.
and not ripping them up and throwing them away or burying them. It's just like holding them, cradling them,
Yes.
honoring them, worshiping them,
Yes.
having compassion for those parts of
Yes.
you.
Yes. Right. I
I feel
say
like
in
my Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like my subconscious knew we were going to have this conversation today because I woke up in a lot of shadow thoughts today.
Mm,
I was like,
mm,
oh, I had a really weird dream and it brought me to, those weird moments where you like wake up and you're like, whoa.
mhm,
So I initially just started having all these like shadowy thoughts, and I've been
mm.
really working towards like, okay, Nixie, that's not going to help. That's not going to help manifest, attract, and be in a state of
Yeah.
joy, like what you shared earlier.
Yeah.
And on some level, I think that we're getting more and more dialed into that. We're able to almost telepathically communicate before something is even going to happen, so I'm really happy. I didn't have an idea of us going into this conversation today, but I'm so happy we did.
Me too. Me too. And
Yeah.
again, we can meet each other here. You know what I mean? It's what I was saying earlier. I meant it when I said how refreshing it is to be on your podcast because not everybody and whether you're spiritually curious or spiritually advanced, I feel like my book is for you. But you know, it's just rare to get on a
Hmm.
show like yours and drop in
We
and
went deep.
go there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's been an honor, and thank you so much for being here again, and just to catch up and hear like your journey and to really provide the women listening, and I'm sure there's men too, but majority of you I know are women. But for that being said, I think that you've created, just to see you go through these layers, this is what I see is like you've had the business, you did the business allowed you to get to that place of burnout, to be at your like hands and knees, to get you to Egypt, to go on this beautiful experience and trip. Like your business, I helped you get there. So
Okay.
it's amazing how we become these architects of our own story by intentionally, honestly, putting us through these challenges and obstacles because we're supposed to arrive in a place that
Yeah.
will bring us to our awakening, to our spiritual or whatever you want to call it, really. It's just like this awareness of consciousness that brings us to our hands and knees and
Yes.
takes us to the next step. And now
Yes.
you're here being able to be a voice for that. And it's truly what we need. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I just want to add one quick thing to that, because I don't know who's listening, and hopefully you're taking a lot away from this conversation, and at the same time not saying to yourself, well, that must be nice, or I don't know when I'll get there. And in it right now, because I think a lot of people just are. And I just thought of my conversation I had with one of my guides, one of my teachers and coaches that I took right before I left for Egypt. I was burnt out, hating my life. I got a referral to her. I had just met her, and I got on this call with this stranger. I don't smoke. I was smoking a cigarette. I was like in so much fucking darkness. And I unloaded on her for 15 minutes straight. She's like, okay, so what's going on? And I just blurted out for 15 minutes all of my shit. And she listened in silence the whole time. And finally, when I was done, she responded with something I will never forget. And she said, I know this is going to sound strange, Jessica, but I'm really excited for you.
Go to that.
Yeah.
Great response to that. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
that
you're
sounds
in
scary.
it. You're in it now. If you are in it now, you are being offered an opportunity for transformation. And it is a gift, even though that sounds bypassy and shit, like you feel like shit and like, what are you talking about? If we don't go around it and we face it, and no matter how long that takes, for some it takes years. And there is another side where there is light, there is dark. Whereas the darkest of the dark, you can find your brightest of your light, and holding that and trusting that and doing the work through it. And I really hope, if you feel compelled to pick up my book, it's a supportive tool and guide to allow you to let go of any sort of self projection and shame around it, because this is the assignment. It's what we came here to experience, the full spectrum of the emotional breadth of being a human. And that's how we activate and evolve ultimately, when we accept that assignment, fully surrender to it, going back to the beginning of our conversation.
Aho to that. There's not much more to add to that on that note. I think that it's really beautiful to arrive there. And also I guess I could just say, you made a good point. It's like really just being in a place of surrender, but also not being a victim.
Yep. Yeah.
You gotta get that part is really hard, because it's easy to be in the victim mentality and go, well, everything's happening to me.
Yep.
But it's not. Everything's happening for you, and it's not what's happening. It's how you handle it.
Correct.
So I don't know, maybe you got to book a trip to Egypt. Maybe you need to, read the book. I think that's a great place to start. And I love when, people like you make tools that are easily accessible, so that it's like, okay, here's something to get started. Just start here.
And that's why I wrote this book. I mean, my book is in so many words, a response to that trip, so that I could take this information to more people. And at the end of every single chapter, there are tools. There are journaling prompts that I call invitations. There are keys that are in the form of meditations and somatic practices and grounding and stargazing. And there's so much in the book that you can use today. And I intentionally wanted this to be a very implementable, practical approach to this, because it's big, it's dense, it's deep what we're talking about. And I didn't want any reader to feel like, well, what do I do now? I'm like, I tell you what to do in every single chapter. And if you practice this work, I know your life is going to open and change and shift and expand, and you'll activate that light through the dark.
Well, beautiful conversation today. Thank you so much, Jessica. You all know where to go to find this book. Head to the show notes. We'll have the links there for you to get your, it's on pre-order. I think when this comes out, it'll be released. Tell us the release date.
August 6th.
August 6th. Okay. So I think it'll be on pre-order then.
Yay!
And we'll definitely make sure that that is included in our show notes so you guys know where to go. As always, it's been a pleasure with you, Jessica. Such a treat. I
Thank
can't
you.
even believe the places we went. Like, wow, so amazing. I think that everybody's going to take this into like deep reflection. Maybe you need to re-listen to this. Maybe you want to press pause and go cry. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of emotions that I feel like are moving through me.
Mm.
So thank you all for being here and learning how to cultivate a high vibe home, not just in your exterior environment, but also within. I'm Nixie Marie, your host, and we just had on Jessica Zweig on our show today. I hope you enjoyed this, and don't forget to keep that chi flowing. I'll see you guys next week.